want to welcome all of you here this morning. I'm sure we still have some that are going to be coming. This is that late arriving group that come later. You know how it is. And those that forgot that it started at 10 rather than 10:40, we'll see some probably come in then too. But anyway, we are glad that you are here. We had a wonderful time at the picnic yesterday. We had between 120 and 130 people at the picnic yesterday. And many of them were from out of town, our former members, and we're just so very, very glad that each and every one of you are here. We welcome you. And I want to acknowledge, let's see, are they all here? Yes, they are. I want to acknowledge our 4 founding families from the beginnings of this church that are here. And of course, Pastor Scott and his family, would you please stand? This was the founding pastor. And the Vrabels were one of the founding members, Vrabels. And the Hinces, Rudy and Gerda Hintz. And the Morrisons, Jack and Cheryl Morrison and family. I think there was maybe 8 couples that started, together with the church there that way. 22 people, okay. And so to have those 4 families come back 25 years later is a real blessing. And we thank you for being here. We acknowledge that we give God glory for what you began and where we're at now 25 years later. We're so thankful for your beginning of this ministry here in this church here. We have Dr. Greg Wines that's here from the state, our state minister, and he's going to come and share a word of welcome and greeting and congratulations.
Thank you, Bob. If you don't know that, Bob is my cousin. So we go back a long ways. I won't tell you how many years because we were born the same year. But anyways, 25 years ago, it was amazing. This state was a radically different state. Not only was it radically different demographically, but it was also different from the Church of God's perspective. But there was an individual who sits over here, his name is Bill Gerals, who literally transformed this state. It was Bill's vision. It was the faithfulness of many pastors around the state who funded it. And then it was the courage of people like Hallie Scott that literally transformed the state. We have seen almost 50 churches planted in the last 25 years because of the vision that Bill had and because of the courage of planters and the faithfulness of pastors all around the state. I just want to tell you, it is a different state today because of that. And I want to thank you for your faithfulness, in fact, as a church, because one of the interesting things that happens in church plants, we have enough history now to look at all the church plants in the state, is that usually when the founding pastor leaves, the next pastor who comes in struggles, is there for just a short while, and then ejects out. That didn't happen here. Obviously, Hallie was here for 15 years. Bob, you've been here 11 years, something like that.
They've been trying to get rid of me. I just want to go.
I know. Well, the amazing thing about that, I want you to hear me say that. That's not only a testimony to what I just said about Bill Gerals and Hallie Scott and Bob Gohey, but that's a testimony to all of you. Because you are a church that supports your leadership. I know that because I've talked to both these pastors. You're a church that is focused on reaching this community for Jesus Christ. I know that. And you do everything it takes to make this a healthy church. So I want to thank you from the state. I want to give you our greetings. I am so thankful that you are here, that you're continued to support the state the way you do, the way you continue to invest so we can be involved in planting other churches just like this. So thank you very much.
Oh, I know I was going to forget it. I'm supposed to do the invocation prayer. Let's stand together as we have a word of prayer and begin this time of worship. Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to be together here today to celebrate 25 years as a church. And we give you all the honor and the glory, Lord. It is your will, it is your moving in the hearts and lives of people that sustains this church. And Lord, we are grateful to you. And we give you all the honor and glory. And we just pray that you would just inhabit the praise of your people as we share our praises here today and give you all the glory of what's happened in this church. Bless us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Would you remain standing, please, for our opening set of songs?
Now, it's kind of interesting. I've got Jack and Steve both here. When I went to First Church of God, which is where this church came from, it was kind of interesting. They go, Jonathan, please come in and be assistant treasurer. And so I said, okay. I was newly married, and just a short time, and then they started training me and doing all that good stuff. And then they go, oh, by the way, we're leaving. And they came up here to Coral Springs, so I've never forgiven them. Neither has Brenda.
Our dear Heavenly Father, this morning we do acknowledge you as a great and mighty God. And we give you all the worship and all the praise and all the honor that is due your name this morning. We love you, Lord, and we give you all the glory. We are so thankful, Lord, again, that we are here to celebrate 25 years of your greatness to this congregation, how you've led and guided and directed. And Lord, we can see nothing but bright days ahead as we continue to praise your name and you continue to work through us. And Lord, we are just so grateful for that. We pray, Lord, your blessing upon our needs this morning. We have those on our prayer list this morning. You're aware of those needs, and perhaps even other needs on our hearts this morning that are burdening us as we're here. You know those as well. And we place all of them in your loving hands and ask that you would meet our needs and that you would bless in the remainder of this service. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated. Before we dismiss the children and the Spanglish ministry, I want to introduce our Spanglish pastors. Pastor Oscar and Sandra Villamil, would you come forward, please? Dave, put it over here. Put it over here. Pastor Oscar and Sandra have been with us now for 2 years doing our Spanglish ministry. And we're so very proud of them. And we're going to be sharing more about them. I'm going to be sharing more about them as we talk during the rest of the morning. But wanted to introduce them to you because they're going to be having their Spanglish ministry going on at this time. So, Servicios en Español, you're dismissed. And children, you are dismissed for Children's Church at this time. Our first speaker this morning is going to be Pastor Bill Gerals. Pastor Gerals was the pastor of First Church of God in Fort Lauderdale, and as has already been mentioned, he was part of the visioning process of many of the churches that started in the state, and specifically this one. And I wanted him to share a little bit about how God gave him the vision for starting this particular congregation and what were some of the challenges and plans that went through in beginning to get this ministry started here in Coral Springs. Pastor Bill, give him a hand, please.
Wow, it's a privilege to be here. I think the mic's not on. Is it on? It's on. It is on. So I need to talk
Let me make
out.
sure. It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just talk louder, okay? It is what an exciting group of people to be here today and to hear you sing and to have this praise band. So many good things. We're just excited to be here with you. We enjoyed being with you in the picnic yesterday, too. That was incredible. All my favorite foods, all the things that I'm not supposed to eat, and just had a wonderful time getting acquainted with so many wonderful people. Pastor asked if I would share basically on 5 things. 5 questions, and I may never come back to any of it, but anyhow, I thought it would be proper for me to at least look at my notes. In Psalm 127, verse 1, it says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, those that labor in vain." And we know the importance of the fact that God is the one who deserves all the credit and the glory for any church planting efforts. Church planting is nothing new. It was part of the New Testament scene where people went from one community to another and they planted new churches. It was routine. It was not something special. It was something routine. And it was the work of every believer to be involved in that process. And I remember a number of years ago that in the Church of God, as we studied some about the history of the movement and some about our growth pattern, it took 55 new people every year to win one new convert. And I thought, golly, we're not doing a very good job. If it takes 55 people to win one, how is the world ever going to be reached? So it was a deep concern. I remembered that as a student in college and then in seminary. And then I made, by the way, a very spiritual discovery. Preachers are known to do that occasionally. But in let me get this year straight, 1968, I went from seminary to Monroe, Michigan. It was a solid congregation that was about 100 years old. And as I was there on that February day in 1968, the temperature was 0. I was considering where was I going to locate after college and seminary. Where am I going to go? The very next weekend, there was an old brother in Alabama by the name of Fred Vines, who was sort of the father of kingdom builders. And Fred Vines called me, and in his southern accent, he said, "Brother Gerald," he said, "this is Fred Vines from Birmingham, Alabama." And he said, "We would like to talk to you about coming to Alabama to start a church." And he said, "We've already purchased airline tickets for you and your wife." He said, "We'd like for you to come down Saturday, and we'll go look at Anniston, Alabama, and see about you planting a church over there." I said, "Well, that sounds good to me. I'll be there." So one week I was in Monroe, Michigan. The next weekend I was in Birmingham, Alabama. And when I got there on Saturday, he said, "You know, we need a pastor over in Anniston, but," he said, "we've got a church started over in Tuscaloosa, and if they don't get a pastor right away, they're going to close the doors." And he said, "Would it make any difference to you whether you go to Anniston or whether you go to Tuscaloosa?" And I said, "Beats me. It wouldn't make any difference. Let's go look." So the next day, we were in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We had 5 people. 5. Just want to see if you're looking. And it was 80 degrees in Tuscaloosa in February. And I made an amazing spiritual discovery that you can hear the Lord better without earmuffs on. That's what brought me to Alabama. It was warm, it was sunny, the azaleas were out, it was a gorgeous season. And I made that transition, but it was a church plant that had been started, and then it was ready to close the doors, and there were just 5 people, a man and his wife, and 3 elderly ladies, and that's all we had. And I remember preaching in the old rooming house where we were at, and I remember that it was a real challenge to get that church going, but after 10 long years, we had a wonderful, exciting, vibrant church that was reaching people across the tracks, and we had wonderful converts, and it was an exciting, growing plant. I discovered that church planting was in my heart because we were reaching new people with the message of Jesus Christ, and people were accepting the Lord, and it was just exciting and thrilling. Once it gets in your blood, you just simply cannot rest until you're reaching people with the message of hope. 1968 to 78, I was there. 1978, I moved to First Church in Tampa. It was sort of my Vietnam experience in pastoral work, I must confess, and Greg Wines may know more about that than I do. But then I moved in 81 to Fort Lauderdale, which was my R&R in Hawaii, compared to everything else. I mean, it was wonderful. But I made some awareness that in Fort Lauderdale, they had already reached a major conclusion that had already been decided before I got there. In 81, when I arrived, Pastor Winston Urie had been the pastor, a wonderful brother. He had a brogue. He was from Ireland, incredible preacher. Everybody knows he was a gifted, capable man. But he had presented to the church based on the fact that the population around Fort Lauderdale, if you know, was all built around the beach in early days. And then the population began to move west. And when it began to move west, in fact, I saw Andrews Avenue a while ago. That was the dividing line between East and West Fort Lauderdale. And our church was located on Andrews Avenue, 13th Street in Andrews, 1242 North Andrews. And we were at that location, but we were also the product of church planting. The church there was. And when we came there in 81, we could see what was happening. The population was moving further west. The church had been given an opportunity to think about moving west in probably 1979 or 80. I talked with Steve Rabel about it last night. And they had 5 acres located, I believe, at Commercial Boulevard and University. Can you envision where that's at? 5 acres, and I recall that the numbers that I remember was around $50,000 for 5 acres. You couldn't buy 5 feet of it now for that. But in any event, the church had made a decision not to buy that property. They didn't want to disenfranchise all the people that lived on the beach and in that east side of the city. So consequently, bringing up the idea of planting a new church at that point was something we just didn't think was wisdom. They had already been through that, decided to stay there. So we thought, with our church planting background, we thought this would be a good idea for us to think about in terms of planting further west. And so that's exactly what we did. The Lord was in it from day one. 1982, Hallie Scott graduated from Warner Southern University, Warner College in those days. And what makes it interesting is that I knew Hallie really as a child from Alabama. I knew his mother and dad. I knew Hallie and Tommy and Bethany. In fact, my son BJ dated his sister Bethany. So no incest there, but we do go back a long time. 1982, I think we had put into our plans that we were going to plant a new church, and it was a part of our capital funds program. And I want to back up just a moment to say that when I first went to Fort Lauderdale, we were surrounded by some of the most mature, loving Christian people I'd ever met in my life. It truly, for me, was like being in Hawaii on R&R after having had some challenging days. What mature, beautiful believers they were. I think of Sister Barbara. I think of the Dodsons that were there. I think of Jim and Edna Temple. I could go on. The Hintz family was there. And we had so many wonderful, mature Christian believers. And when we began to think about calling a youth pastor, and then we put into a plan that we would not only call a youth pastor, but we would think in terms of planting a new church. That, I think, was in 1983 or 4. Then, when Hallie came to be our youth pastor, it was really a shoo-in from day one. And God just worked through all those plans, put it together for us, and handed us, given a little time, a package whereby we were able to bless Hallie on a given Sunday morning as they met at our altar in Fort Lauderdale. We laid hands on them, we commissioned them, and said, in the name of God, go and plant a church with our love, with our blessing. We sent his support for the year, the balance of the year. They started in May, and through the year, he had full support with all the office equipment, anything he needed at First Church. All of that was available. It's a part of the kingdom, not just a part of a church, but a part of the kingdom. And that's how we saw it. And because of that concept, that vision, we were able to assist other churches. I later became involved with Kingdom Builders and church planting efforts, and then served for 10 years as coordinator for church planting in the state. what an opportunity that was. And I remember Greg Wines was there with Mary Kay on a Sunday morning, and I believe it was again maybe in May of 87, right? 87. And on that Sunday, we planted 2 new churches out of the first church in Orlando. So sometimes we need to see that churches can be expendable. We are not here permanently as a monument to ourselves or to the world. We're only to be an instrument of God's love, God's peace, and God's grace. That's the purpose and the mission of the church. Well, Hallie came, served with us. We did a lot of fishing together. The Lord forgave us for that. And the church was gracious. And we did a lot of good fishing together, and we remembered some of the stories both with Hallie yesterday and then last night with my good brother Guy Neal down at Hollywood, Florida, where we spent the night. We are just so grateful to see your 25 years of celebration here. I may have missed a point. What was the challenges? You know, there's challenges every day in life. And if you're on target with God, moving in God's direction, the challenges really melt by the wayside when you keep focused on what you're really about, what you're doing. Don't let the obstacles become bigger than the mission. And so we focused on that, and God was gracious and forgiving. Did we make mistakes? I'm sure we did. If we had it to do over again, would we do it? Yes. Because God was in it. It was the right thing to do. We knew that the community was moving this way. When we did a demographic study in 1984, thereabouts, we made the awareness that Coral Springs was a city that was planned to be, at that time, 50,000 people. It was a planned community. All the streets were brand new, the fire plugs, the firehouses, everything. Brand new. Not too many places in the country was that the case, but it was here. The average age of persons living in Coral Springs on that day was average age of 28. Is that right? That's my memory. 28. So it was a young city. By golly, it's got a little older, I notice. So the church was moving west. It was there were only 11 churches in all of Coral Springs in those days, according to the demographic study. Did we need a church here? Yes. In earlier days, we planted churches by putting $1 a month into a Kingdom Builder program. Everybody did it. All of our churches around the country began to copy the idea from Fred Vines in Alabama and then Wally Kufelt here in Florida. We continued that program. We put a big emphasis to the state that let us not forget our brothers and sisters that reside in South Florida. A third of the population of the entire state is here. And if we're concerned about planting churches in other parts of the world, let's not forget that South Florida has a demographic that must not be overlooked. And God was good in that vision. We made the state aware. And there have been a number of churches planted here because of that concept and that vision. What training did we have? Hallie, he had been trained at Warner University. He had been trained in a pastor's home. He was young, but he was exciting and experienced, and he had a willingness. I think Rebecca probably helped him mature a lot. She was a sweetheart, too. And they came to us. We had church planting seminars in those days all around the country. Dr. Winarn was the church father of church planting. I remember hearing him say many, many years ago on a stage in Pasadena, California, he said, there are hundreds of ways, there are thousands of ways of starting new churches. So how do you do it? Well, you find God's plan. You find what's right for this situation, and then you go with it. And if you are not careful, you can analyze until you're paralyzed. And there is a point at which you get the call, you do what God wants you to do, you move with that plan, you learn, you adjust it, you fine-tune it. We also had Dr. Peter Wagner, who was a marvelous church planter, Carl George. These were people that were inspiring our pastors around the country that were going to church planting seminars. Jack, I believe you went to church planting seminar with Hallie. I think you did. I don't know who else went. I don't remember. But I know that as a group, they went to a church planting seminar, spent an incredible amount of time there. And they were learning about methods of using tools that were available to us to plant the church. Well, I could say a whole lot more, but I won't. I'm on a time frame. I want to honor that. I want to thank you for the invitation today. I hope I've been straightforward with the information that the Lord has put on my heart. I want to take a moment, though, to introduce my lovely wife, Elaine, who's put up with me for the last 8 years. Elaine, would you stand where you're at? And I just discovered that she's known Jonathan Cootie since he was a kid. So, Jonathan, you've been under careful supervision, and I didn't know you had all this musical gift when you turned to become the treasurer in Fort Lauderdale. Okay. I want to just bring greetings, though, from the church in Vero Beach, where we serve as a pastor of visitation. And Elaine and I are overseeing these prime timers. We're having a delightful time in our older age. We oversee the prime timers, people 55 years of age and over. And we have a luncheon every month, and we have parties, and we have celebrations. And last summer we took a group to Alaska. We're talking about a Hawaii trip maybe next year or the year after. We took a group to the Panama Canal back in March. Friends, you can be old but still having a lot of fun, and God is blessing. And we're just extremely grateful. So may the Lord be with you, and we want to celebrate fully with you on this day. Thank you, Pastor.
And now, as you already know, Hallie Scott was the founding pastor, and he's going to come and share about some of the challenges of that, starting a church from scratch.
I noticed we put a clock up in the back.
Uh-huh.
I didn't allow that. I don't look at it. I don't wear a watch. I have no idea what time it is. I don't even know how much minutes I was allowed. So just know 2 minutes is what Steve said. Here's the problem with the way you organize this. Steve gets to talk after me.
Uh-huh.
That's a problem. That's a problem. I had to throw away half my material because he has a chance to respond afterwards, and it's just not fair. I have absolutely enjoyed being back. This is just a wonderful experience for my family to be back here. For so many of you who have also moved to other areas, it's wonderful to see you. For those of you who have come here since I was here, I want to say that it stirs me to see a strong church here after having left. Because as a pastor, when you plant a church, y'all are always in my heart. This is my home church in that sense. And I love this church, and I love this place. I love Pastor Bob. I don't know him that well, but I love him because he has done a tremendous job. I've always said to him when we've talked a couple of different times before, our gifts are a lot different. And he was exactly what God wanted here to follow me from being here, and it's been a blessing to the church. So I appreciate his years of ministry here. And again, like Brother Greg said, you know, to have a church that was planted, have two pastors in 25 years, is a remarkable statement about the people of the church. And so I'm just proud to have been a part with y'all in that. Realize this, I was 24 years old when we started the church here in 1985. If you do the math, I'm 49 right now. Huh? I was 24, son, at one time, and I had a lot of hair. I had a lot of hair just like you've got. And just know some of you have the same hairstyle that I'm working on. And so you really can't say a lot. Brother Gerald's has been a part of my life for a long time, and it was great to reconnect with him some, and haven't had that opportunity, certainly through all our family years. The first Sunday he ever left Fort Lauderdale to go on vacation, I got to preach, you know, and I was a young youth pastor. And my sermon was about how the kids made fun of bald-headed Elijah. And now I be one. You know? So I tell my kids at the church all the time, if they make fun of me not having hair, that I'm going to preach on Elijah is calling the bears out to eat those 40 kids, and they won't make fun of me anymore. you know, it was an exciting time frame. When we came to Fort Lauderdale, we knew that was possibilities of us planting the church. That was on the works already. We were there for 18 months as youth pastors. Still today, I love seeing some of the young people. Maurice here, you know, the Sunday I was back for Stephanie's wedding a few years ago. It was a thrill to see her because she was a part of that youth group in Fort Lauderdale, and it just brought a grin to Rebecca and I. We sat there and said, poked each other, that's Maurice over there, you know, and enjoyed that. I still see David and Cindy Eisenheim and Scott and Heidi Eisenheim. I still hear from some of the other young people from that youth group. And it's thrilling because some of them did come and become a part of the church here over the years in different ways too. It is exciting to remember those years. I remember being in the school and setting up. How many of y'all remember that? I mean, was that just a blast to have to set all that stuff up every week? We talked about it a little bit as we were coming in. I wish that we could have gotten in touch with John, the custodian at Maplewood Elementary, because for 9 years or so when we were in that school, he faithfully came every morning and opened the building and set up the chairs for us and was almost a part of the church family in those senses, and we really would have liked to have touched base with him. A lot of hard work went into this. I remember all the mailings. We set up 200 chairs. We wanted to have the big crowd. We had 72 at our first service. And that was real exciting, but 30 of them or more were visitors, you know, state people coming in, other folks like that. And so the next week there were 40 of us, and we began to build from there. I remember a Sunday with 14. We made them bring the kids from the nursery up so there would at least be a few bodies there, you know. It was a challenge, but we were blessed as we started. The way we looked at it in that picture, the state was wanting to support us as we planted. We got $15,000 the first year from the state, $10,000 the second, and $5,000 the third. And they said, you got to be self-supporting by then. Now, fortunately, Fort Lauderdale was a part of that support. They paid my salary for the remainder of that first year from May to December, like Brother Bill said. And they also gave $25,000 worth of startup funds to begin with. And the 22 people that came from the church at Fort Lauderdale had an average giving, I think, Jack, was about $30,000. I don't remember, but we had come up with those numbers back then. So we knew we had enough support to survive. But God blessed, and we reached a lot of different families, and you look around and you see some of those families. I know there's been 1,000 people that have been members of this congregation over the years. I know that. We had counted one time the number of families that were apart with us for a year or 2 years or 3 years and then moved back up north or moved out west or moved to another part of the state, were transferred for business this way or that way. There's a few that have moved to North Carolina, only 1 or 2, you know.
Boo.
I walk in fear all the time that Pastor Bob's going to come after me, you know, because of some of the families that have moved up to North Carolina. But that has been part of the history of this church. The church has continued to grow and build believers, many of which have been sent out. We did a Navigators 2-7 series. I remember I'd been trained in it. I was excited. Matter of fact, I believe it was one of your buddies that trained us in Navigators 2-7. So I thought, we're going to do this. And so it was a 2-year small group study. And I remember that we had, I think, 12 adults go through it for 2 years. We memorized 65 verses. Today, no one from that group's in this congregation. Within 2 or 3 years of us having finished that series, Rebecca and I were the only ones here that had been in it. But each of those couples are in another place now leading small groups and doing discipleship and leading people to Christ. I remember talking to Robin Marilee Grove one time, and they were over in Singapore, and he was leading a Bible study at Caterpillar offices there once a week, and he had about 20 or 30 guys coming to his Bible study. And I thought, isn't that tremendous? Now, that's part of the ministry of the Coral Springs Community Church. That's how God has blessed. Even the ones that we visited with last night that have come that are in South Carolina or in other parts of Florida or in other states, you know, all of that is part of the history of this congregation. So I'm thrilled to truly have been a part of that. I think about the homes that we had Bible studies in. We met in a school. You know, I remember going to West Broward with Reggie Smith, and they were having their dedication for their new building. And they had been in a school for 10 years. And at that time, we were about 3 years in. I said, we're never going to be in a school 10 years. We were in a school 12. You know, young, 24, you thought, we're going to get this going. We're going to build a building and buy property, all that stuff. And 12 years later, we did. But, you know, it was a challenging thing. We used homes for Bible study. We talked about it with Rudy and Gerda. We used their home for Bible studies, and we did them on Friday nights, and we invaded them and brought all the kids in there. And sometimes that was challenging. Sometimes the kids were pretty excited in life. Steve and Janice's home we used. Jack and Cheryl's home we used. We just did all that we could to be together as a group and share together. We built tremendous memories of events and activities that we had together. We began to have 4th of July parties at somebody's house, and they still have 4th of July parties, I'm sure. And we shot off fireworks. You remember John always got us the fireworks, the custodian. He would go out of state somewhere, but we had serious fireworks. And it was a blast. We had wonderful time frames of those lip syncs. I mean, it just, was amazing to connect that way. We became a family. We became a church family. I remember meeting Gordon Delo. My wife was teaching 5th grade at Tamarack, and she had a young lady in her class that was there, and I went to the hospital down in Tamarack to visit somebody, and they asked me, would you be willing to visit this lady next door? She seems to be in so much pain. Would you just go pray with her? And I walked in the room, and it was Meg Delo. And we began to pray together, and as I talked to her and told her who I was, she said, well, I think your wife's my daughter's teacher. And shortly after that, Gordon came in. And would you believe Gordon and I had a 3-hour lunch, I think, that day. Now, y'all can believe that, I know, because you know Gordon. I can talk as much as Gordon can. I mean, I can go toe-to-toe with him, man. 3 hours later, we were still talking, and Gordon and I have been wonderful friends, and he was a great asset to the church, and it was such a blessing to have quality families like that. I believe today, right now, Gordon and Meg probably are the family that have been here the longest now of the ones who originally have been here. That was only a few months into our process of having the church. When I was gone, Gordon would preach, and it was a great thing to have someone of his maturity and stability ministry-wise here and sharing in the church. And I just was thrilled to know all of that. Meg helped deliver one of our boys and became my wife's best friend. Very clearly, after being in birth together like that, you could say that. All 3 of my sons were born here in this area. My first one was born in Plantation, the other 2 here in Coral Springs. So our family is forever tied to that. It came time for us through all of our time of meeting together. We would get up to 100 and we would drop down. We'd get up over 100, we'd drop down. And in the school, you just never could get beyond that. We really recognized we needed an identity in the community, someplace that was permanent. And man, to think about that with 100 people, and the land out here was hundreds of thousands an acre and stuff like that, and to build a building was just scary. And somewhere in that process, we met someone who gave us the concept of doing a church and day school. His name was Bob Tillery. He ended up being a crook. Isn't it amazing that what others intend for harm, God intends for good? Listen to that, He took $40,000 of our money, but know this, what others intend for harm, God intends for good. And that concept has blessed this church over the years to have a wonderful child care center and church together. And it was the only way we could make the numbers work financially to ever have a property and building out here. And so we began that process. And to do it, we needed to raise some cash. And we decided we were going to raise $160,000. I don't know if any of y'all remember this from that time frame. I remember it because we had to make some serious sacrifices. We took our budget and we sacrificed about 25% of it and said we're going to put that towards that. Pastor Henry Dodson and I were working together as full-time staff. We both went to part-time and supported ourselves. I went to work at Ace Hardware and with Frank. And so we saved about $50,000 by he and I doing that of our salaries. And for about 3 years almost we did that. But during this 18-month period of time, our goal was to raise $160,000. We did oil change Saturdays, and it became an unbelievable process. Once a month for 16 months, is that what we did? For 16 months, every Saturday, once a month, we would go over to Carl & Son. And Steve, I wish we still had this shirt because I would love to hold it up today. He wore it for 16 Saturdays, and he had so much oil on that shirt. We would change the oil. The ladies, I wish we had the oil can outfit that we had that people would wear at the side of the street to attract people. And the oil was donated and all that stuff, and we came together, and we raised about $2,500 a Saturday, I think was about what our average was, for 16 weeks. And then we had some outside people that we approached, that we reached to try to bring some money in. Some of the people sent in $20,000 or $30,000 that way. Our people gave extra during that time frame, and in that 18-month period of time, we raised $160,000. that gave us the basis and foundation that we needed to be able to get property and get a building and get a mortgage and those kinds of things. Then we realized nobody wanted to loan money to a church. Banks weren't interested. We had never run a daycare. We had all the paperwork. We had all the designs of what it would be. We showed them how it would be profitable. This area needed child care so badly. It was an area that was growing so rapidly. I believe there were 50,000 when we got here, and what are there, 250,000 people in Coral Springs now, and that's 25 years later. That's a pretty big growth curve that took place here, and there just weren't enough child care centers. So we knew it was a need, but they wouldn't believe us at the bank. And so we prayed about it and prayed about it. Somewhere in my conversations with Dr. Reginald Smith there in the church down in Plantation, he talked to me about a group called Third World Mission. He said, you ought to contact them. And so we did, and our leadership got together and we said, let's contact these people. And I remember very clearly the guy that was the head of Third World Mission came down, he and his wife, and he was a real simple looking guy, and dressed real casually. And we met at our home over in Maplewood at that time, and I don't know, there was about 20 of us that met with him. And we shared together what our vision was and what our thoughts were. We brought him out here to this piece of property and walked on the property, told him what we wanted to do. And so when we were done, I looked at him and I said, well, what's the process? He said, I'll loan you the money. I said, you don't have to take it back to a committee. He said, I'm the committee. He said, I'm the president of the organization. If I say we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And they arranged to loan us the $800,000 that we needed. And we were able to pay off the bonds that we had sold to be able to get the property. We were able to pay and get everything built and directed and stuff like that. And that in itself was one of the biggest miracles that God performed. Because there was no way for a church our size to ever get the funding together to do this. Then God all of a sudden opened the doors of blessings. We opened a child care center, and the kids came. And the kids are still here, It worked out as a great blessing to the church. We built the facility, and people came, and we began to reach the community. I remember our first candlelight service on Christmas Eve. It seemed to me to be always the best service we would always have. We had more visitors on Christmas Eve at the candlelight service than any other time during the whole year that we would ever do anything. And so we would advertise it, and we would have more guests that night and reach more people. And it was a wonderful thing. We did Bring a Friend Sundays a lot. Matter of fact, one of my best friends is here today. And Roger and Dina walked in the door at one of the schools there, and it was on Bring a Friend Day, and Fred and Jane Kaufman were a part of the church. Jane worked at the bank with Dina and invited them. They walked in the door, and somebody said, this guy likes to fish as much as you do. And my first comment to him was, what are you doing Thursday night? And truly, he likes to fish as much as I do. We've spent 5 days not catching, but fishing over the last 5 days. And it's been a glorious journey. For me, watching all the lives impacted and affected over the years has been tremendous. Watching and being a part of the baby dedications and the graduations and the weddings. I didn't have to do hardly any funerals here. I've had to do a lot of that in North Carolina, but not here. But it's been a blessing to be a part of the families. Richard, stand up back there. I want y'all to see the biggest guy I ever put under. Back in the day, I know that Jeff came up with the idea of the horse trough. And I got to give credit where credit's due. We use a horse trough in North Carolina because we don't have a baptistry there either. And the first thing I said was we're going to buy a horse trough because it's the nicest baptismal service for a preacher. You don't get wet. You kneel down outside of it. You take them in, and you don't have to bring them up very far. I went into a pool with Richard wondering if I could take this giant down and get him back up. I did. He floated a little bit. And I was very pleased that he came back up. But that's the journey, isn't it? I had the opportunity just 2 weeks ago to go to Maria's baby shower there in Charlotte and realize that we will forever be connected. All of us here, we are forever connected in the ministry of the Coral Springs Community Church. And that's thrilling for me. It was my life. Today, I'm in charge of the church planting in North and South Carolina as the chairman of the church development board there. And we plant and we assess pastors. I would have never picked me. We wouldn't use a 24-year-old. I talked to Greg about that a while ago. You wouldn't. Here in Florida, you wouldn't. We wouldn't use a 24-year-old. My wife was older, is right. And that's why I'm in my 40s and she's in her 50s. Only for about 3 more weeks, you know. Only for about 3 more weeks. I turned 50 in November, but realize that we are forever connected, and I will always know that God worked and blessed in His miraculous ways. You can't come up with your own plan. And here's the passage I know right now. What God has begun, He will continue. He will be faithful to complete it. It's in your hands as the church to continue the process. And I just always smile about that because of all the churches that I was involved with Kingdom Builders here with Brother Bill. I became a part of the board. I watched as Greg planted and others planted. So I know a lot of the history of a lot of the churches that were planted. We planted 5 in Orlando during that time frame. I know this to be one of the strongest of those churches today that were planted through those years because this church has been faithful and consistent and strong through all of the years. Might not always have been the largest of those, but has always been one of the strongest leadership-wise and faithful-wise. And I'm so blessed to have been a part of that. I love y'all. I love the church. And I'm so thankful that God's kingdom is so much bigger than this one little place. But our hands from this ministry have reached out all around the world and touched people everywhere. And it's been a blessing. Pastor Bob, it's up to you now. Oh, you're going to give it to Steve. Yeah.
I can only imagine that North Carolina must be a very sinful place because we have to send so many missionaries up there to them. So that's all I can say. We're going to hear from 2 more founding members. Steve Rabel is going to come and rebut whatever hell he said. And then Jack Morrison is going to come and follow Steve in sharing about being founding members.
Oh, I'm sorry, the short people that were speaking before me. I bring greetings from North Carolina. But I'd never say that. Hold on a second, Gordon. Got to make sure we get this, you know. You're always taking pictures from out there, but, you know, you never get the crowd. So everybody smile, say cheese. Okay, there we go. All right, now I can turn that off. Okay. I thought it was interesting that Greg talked about Pastor Bill and transforming the state. I think that was during the Civil War. We used to be part of the Carolinas, I think. So I think you know it's great now that there is a state of Florida, and I tell you it's been kind of mixed feelings coming back. I came down to Florida in 1960, and I got so much sand in my shoes it's ridiculous. And this is home. And you know, people say, well, you know, do you like it up there? Is it is it home yet? And it kind of is, but there's so many memories here. My life is here. You know, we came here 25 years ago and started this church. And even then, even back before that, it started in 1960 at the Fort Lauderdale Church, you know, where we came here. And Jonathan, I am sorry. I did not mean to do that intentionally. There were a lot of different things that happened, and I'm not going to pick on how. I will say that we did go to that church planting seminar, and remember we drove my mom's car, and there was that hump in the middle of the back. I was so tired, but I refused to let somebody else drive because I wanted no chance of getting that hump in the back. But I remember we were there, and there was some pastor there. I forget who it was, but he was doing faith healing. And was it Peter Wagner that did it? Hallie went there and asked for hair, and well, some miracles don't last forever. You know, we had, you know, I was trying to think of, you know, what to say. It's kind of funny. I was going to talk about the original vision that we had, and then because I said, okay, nobody knows that, because I was the only one there at the time. You know, maybe Jack would remember it, but and then Bill comes up to me and he, picnic yesterday, and he says, remember that parcel out there out west? Where was that parcel? I'm going to talk about that. I'm like, all right, oh, okay, thanks. There goes my notes. And then Hallie starts talking about something. I said, okay, there go my other notes. So I thought I would bring just a little different perspective to you, just a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about the worship. This praise band is fabulous. I want to take. I've kind of stayed, in my church. I really haven't gone to a whole lot of other churches, but I have had the chance to visit other churches. And you go into some of these big churches and you listen to their praise band. Let me tell you something. You don't take a back seat to nobody. This praise band is just fabulous. I remember, I think, when we had that 14 in church that Hallie talked about, and about 6 of them were kids. And I think the ladies may have been at some conference or something. We had no music talent in our church, except Rebecca played a little bit and Janice played a little bit. We had no talent in the church. I had played the piano before. So somebody said, Steve, can you at least play something? I think I learned 3 songs for that Sunday. And the one that I learned that we sang for prayer was I Love You, Lord. Just that simple little chorus. And I was feeling pretty good because I got through the 3 songs pretty good for the service. And then Hallie always offers the altar call, but there was only 14 people there. It wasn't going to be a problem. It was the longest altar call this church has ever had. I kid you not. I played I Love You, Lord 19 times. Because I knew no other chorus, no other song to play. I just couldn't do anything else. And I played, and the sweat's just rolling down my face. Because I'm like, what do I do now? And I said, I don't want to stop because he's too loud out there. He says, you did what? And so I had to keep playing. We came to a point in our lives where we decided we wanted to, maybe make the change and move out of South Florida. And that's something we've been talking about for years and years and years. But it was always so tough because we were so tied to the church. And we had so many financial struggles. Remember Jack, Roger, Hallie? We had so many financial struggles, and it just seemed like, now's not the time to leave. The church, man, well, if we leave now, and it's like they got this struggle and they got that struggle, and Lord doesn't care about all these little things. He takes care of his own without any problem. And I didn't realize that soon enough. So I sold my house when the market was down and everything else because I stuck around too long. But Janice and I were both like, the music here is just so weak without us. I led the music and she played, and that's about all we had. And then the Lord blessed the church with Jonathan and Brenda. And they didn't take it up a notch. They took it up about 10 notches. And we said, great, we can leave. I said, now we can get out of here. And but then it was like, well, who's going to run like the soundboard and all this other stuff? And so I sat there and I continued doing that, and then along comes Paul, and he takes over back there, and with the help of Philip and David and some of these other, and it's like okay, now I can leave. Well, that didn't happen just exactly then either, but we eventually made that decision and left, and it was tough leaving this church because this is our home, and it still is our home. And even though I live up in that nasty little land that Bob loves and cherishes so much,
Yeah.
well, whenever I drive this way, I know I'm coming home. And by the way, there still is a founding member of the church right there. She's still here. So anyway, we appreciate this opportunity, and the church, we're just, Hallie took one of my scriptures I was going to talk about, that he who began a good work would be faithful to complete it. He's still working on it, but boy, I tell you what, he's done an awful good job of taking care of the church here. So thanks.
Well, I have to ask you to pray for me this morning, because I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a reverend like Pastor Gerald and Pastor Scott, and I'm certainly not a comedian like Steve.
But your name is Cheryl.
I'm the better half of Cheryl. For Janice's benefit. As Pastor Gerald mentioned, First Church of God in Fort Lauderdale was a big part of this church getting started. And of course, at that time and even currently today, we're very thankful for the First Church of God in Fort Lauderdale for the support they gave us, and also for the State Church of God and the funds that they provided and all the additional support that they were willing to give us back 25 years ago when we started this church. It's been mentioned about the trip to Philadelphia. I don't think I've ever been as pleased to see an airplane as I was when I knew I was going to fly back home on one, rather than having to sit on that hump in Flossie Vrabel's car. If you're not familiar with the old cars, they had the drivetrain going down the center. And the back seat of that car didn't have much padding between the hump and your rear end. And it wasn't a pleasant place to sit going to Philadelphia. Steve got tired early in the morning, and I was exhausted, but I was willing to raise my hand and say, yeah, I'll drive. Some of you men may remember our trip to Lake Buffum for a spiritual outing, and what our wives did to our underwear when we pulled them out of our luggage. They decorated them for us. And of course, no church is valid without good fellowship. And we had fellowship almost every Sunday at the food court at the mall. We would go there after church, and everyone would go to their separate place to get their food, and we would line up a whole row of tables and come back and have our fellowship. I had about 7 items on here, and most of them have been covered. Thankfully, see, the Lord's answering prayers already. But I would like to thank the current church members for their hospitality yesterday and today. It's been very nice to be with you this weekend, and we appreciate all the work that you did. We know that these things don't just happen out of midair. It was a reminder to me yesterday as we were taking down the chairs at the park of the many times we did that at the cafeterias in the school. So it even brought back memories yesterday when we did that. And most of all, thanks to God for the souls that have been won and the lives that have been touched. Thank you.
I personally want to thank all of you that were involved with planning this whole 25th anniversary. I wanted to take a moment to just say that. Planning the picnic and being involved with setting up tables and chairs and getting the foods and everything else, and the decorating and getting ready for today. There's a lot of good workers in this church, and I appreciate each and every one of you for helping and putting that together. Hallie had done a wonderful job of preparing this church and getting it to the place that it was at. And so when Cheryl and I came, we had some specific skills that this church was looking for. And when they had contacted me, they were looking for someone that could help out with their youth ministry, could help out with their children's ministry, could help out with the music program. And those were the areas that Cheryl and I were gifted in, has been working in for years. And so it just seemed like everything that they were looking for were things that we had experience in, working with families and working with marriages and parenting and all of those kinds of things. And so we were excited that this was God's place for us. That's the way we felt about it. That this is exactly where God wanted us to come. And I could have never done, I told Hallie this yesterday, I could have never done what he did, planting this church. And that's just not in my DNA, to go and plant a church like this. And so God uses us at different times in our ministries to place us where we're needed at that particular time. And we felt like that was exactly what God had done with us. And we started here in April of 2000. But the next year, I call it the year of change. It was a tough year the following year, our second year of ministry here. We had a change in our day school director. We had a change in our day school teachers. We had a change in our secretary. We had a change in our associate pastor. We had a change in our music as we were making a transition into a more contemporary style of worship. I say that, you've heard about the music wars that happen in churches. We only had some skirmishes. We didn't have any real wars, but we did have some skirmishes as we were making that transition to what we are today in the praise band. And I echo that with Steve. This is a fabulous praise band. And for a church our size to have this talent is amazing. And you do a wonderful job. And the Cooties are a big part of that. We do thank them. But the changes that took place in that second year of ministry were very difficult, were very painful, yet they were beneficial. And we see God's hand at work in all of that because many blessings came about from that year of difficult changes that took place. Cheryl ended up becoming the day school director and has been the day school director now for 8+ years and has done a fabulous job as the day school director. We had $430,000 in revenue last year from the day school. That's pretty amazing. We have a great staff of dedicated Christian teachers here that are working in the day school, and we are so thankful for that. And Cheryl's made that a priority to make sure that she gets dedicated Christian teachers that are involved teaching these children. We want this to be a ministry of this church, not just a business that's run out of this church. And she's made that a real ministry as she made sure that we have a wonderful staff here and that she is very involved in when new families come. They become a part of the day school, of telling them about the church and encouraging them to come and attend. And we're going to see in a moment how many are beneficiaries of that are part of the church now because of the day school. I'm going to talk to you and ask you to stand in just a moment. But another benefit that came from that, in that change of the secretary, we now have had a string of 3 bilingual secretaries. That secretary at that time was not bilingual. But in this particular area, we needed bilingual secretaries that could speak to people in their own language, in the Spanish language. And so we're thankful for that. It was a blessing that came about from that. We've had some wonderful associate pastors in youth ministry since that time, too. Very good part and full-time youth pastors, and it's been a real blessing there. And then, as I said, the fabulous praise band that developed out of the music thing. So even though that was a year of difficult changes, we see God's hand of blessing that's come about from that. I want to highlight a few ministries that have come about over the years, and it's just going to be touching a few because there's many that could be talked about. But Financial Peace University, those of you that are familiar with that, it's a program established by Dave Ramsey where he gives a Christian perspective to how we can get the proper handle on our finances with the emphasis on getting debt-free, and that's the way God wants us to be rather than be debtors to our lenders. And so that's been a program that we started, and Steve was involved with that, and Paul was involved with that. And when Steve left, Paul has now taken over that ministry completely, and twice a year, he leads a 13-week Financial Peace University. I remember the first time that we ran it, we had 40 people that went through that course the very first time that we ran it. And we've done it every year, twice a year, ever since that time. And it's been a real blessing to be able to reach people and help them with their finances. In 2007, we started our Spanglish ministry. I'd been feeling a need. You know, when we were talking about the demographics, 25% of Coral Springs is Hispanic-speaking people. And we needed to be reaching that demographic, not just being an English-only congregation. We needed to be reaching out into the Spanish-speaking communities. And so we started the Spanglish ministry. I got in touch with Alejandro Di Francisco, and we talked about that. And he'd been wanting to establish a congregation in South Florida. And I was feeling a desire from God to have that. And so he put us in touch with Carlos Daza from Miami who came up and established and started our Spanglish ministry, was with us for a year, and then he decided he needed to stay down in Miami. But in that time frame, during that year, the Via Mills had started attending here. First, their children had, because they were still missionaries. They're from Colombia, but they were missionaries in Costa Rica at that time. But their children were living here with their uncle, rather. And it started at school here, and they were at Monarch High School, where my daughter is a teacher. And so she had invited the children to come, and they had come, and they'd gotten excited and loved the church, started coming here. And then the Via Mills came from Costa Rica here, and they thought this was just going to be a stopover, because they were planning to go to Pennsylvania to start the Spanglish ministry up there. But they got involved in our Spanglish ministry, and then when Pastor Daza decided he needed to stay down in Miami, they just naturally moved right into the leadership of our Spanglish ministry. So God has been leading in that as well. It's wonderful. And one of the sub-ministries from that is our ESOL, or ESL, or whatever you want to call it, English as a Second Language. That ministry has come about from that. And so we, again, twice a year, we do classes. I think they're anywhere from 13 to 16 weeks long, teaching Spanish-speaking people the English language. And we have many bilingual people here in our congregation, as well as some that are English-speaking that are teaching in that. I'm still not sure how that works out exactly, but we do have some English-speaking people that are working in that ministry as well. And that has turned out to be a wonderful thing, to be able to reach out to the community and helping them to get familiar with the English language. And our Spanish ministry has benefited from that. We've received, some members have come into that ministry from this particular ministry. And so we're really excited about that. And then 2008, I wanted to tell you that. If you remember, 2008 was when we were starting to really get into the midst of this really terrible economic crisis that our country is in right now. The recession's over, they tell us. Yeah, right. But anyway, that was when we were in the midst of it. In 2008 was our best year for both attendance and giving. And I thought that was amazing how God had worked that out. That was our highest attendance and highest giving year that we'd ever had in the midst of that economic crisis. In 2009, we started a prison ministry to the Broward County Jail. And there's 4 guys every week that go to the Broward County Jail and do a ministry, a Bible study with the prisoners there, with the inmates. And 2 of them are English-speaking and 2 of them are Spanish-speaking. And so we get Spanish inmates as well as English inmates, and we minister to both of those language groups in the jails. That's an important ministry. And this year we're going to take that up a notch, and we're going to get involved with the, is it Angel Tree Ministry? Is that what it's called? Angel Tree Ministry, which is a ministry to making sure that at Christmas time, inmates' families, especially the children, have Christmas presents, and that they, are supported and loved and so forth for that. And we're going to be involved with that ministry this coming Christmas for the first time. And so we're excited about that. This past August, we had a service at the beach. We did our Sunday school. We did our morning worship. And then we had a baptismal service all at the beach, down at Pompano Beach. And that was exciting. We were there just singing and praising and preaching and so forth. And people would come by and wonder what in the world these group of fanatics were doing. But they would stop and they'd listen. And that was a great thing. We baptized 12 people this past August down at the beach. 4 of them were youth. 4 of them were from the Spanglish ministry, and then 4 from the English-speaking ministry. And so it's been a wonderful thing that's been going on. This church, Hallie and I were both talking about that. How many people have come through this church? And it's probably right. There's probably been 1,000 people that have come through this church over the years. And that's one of the unique issues of being a Florida pastor. You've got to have growth in mind at all times just to stay even, because there's so many people that come in and out all the time. And so we're excited that we can maintain and also grow just a little bit along the way. And it's a huge impact of people that have come here and that have been trained and discipled and have gone elsewhere and are then ministering elsewhere. And that's been a pattern from this church over the years. And God has really blessed in that way. This church is healthy, and it was started in a healthy way. And I give you a lot of credit there, Hallie, for starting this church and giving it a good, healthy start, and it's been maintained, and the church is healthy, it's united. This is one of the most united churches you're going to find, I think, and that adds to the fact that you've had only 2 pastors in 25 years. You are not hard on pastors, and that is really a blessing. Believe me, I am so thankful. Richard, I'm so thankful for the fact that this is such a wonderful group of people. It's a pleasure to pastor you. We have a bright future, I believe, that God has a lot of wonderful things yet to do as we continue to serve Him and minister through Him and through His leadership. And so I'm excited about our future. Now I want to talk about the day school impact on the church. And I want to use one family as an example, not one family, but one group of people as an example of that. Nadja Vega, would you stand up, please? Nadja came to the church here as a result of our day school, right? You brought our kids in, they were here, and then all of a sudden they decided to start attending the church here. And they've been, regular attenders for some years now. And then Nadja, at a women's meeting, invited Stephanie Schaefer to come to that women's meeting. Stand up, Stephanie. Stephanie came to that women's meeting, and despite meeting all the crazy ladies in this church, she decided to still come and worship with us on a regular basis. And after she'd been coming for a while, she decided to ask her parents to come. Vincent and Lord Fusco, would you stand up, please? And so now they have been regular attenders here over the last several months. All from a day school. They got to a parent, they got to someone else, they got to someone else. And that's what is so wonderful. You may be seated now. That is what's so wonderful. That was what was the design. And I want you to know that that design is a blessing here. Now, I want to ask all parents, all who have come here, strictly that they came here because their kids were going to school here and then started attending. Just those day school parents. Would you please stand so that we can see how many came to this church as a result of being their children in the day school? Now, and there are others that have come like this, as I mentioned with Nadja here, that have come as a result of being a part of being invited by these day school parents. And so this day school has had an impact. And we've got some day school parents that are not here, too. That would be additional people here. And so we want you to know, Pastor Scott, Pastor Gerald, that what you decided to start here, the vision that you started here with the day school and the church together, was a wonderful idea. And we're seeing the fruits of that over these years, and we thank you for that. And I wanted to ask one of the day school parents to come and share it. So Barbara Majori is going to come and share about that. Oh, yeah, turn it in.
Okay, well, I was told to keep it short, so I'm going to keep it about 20 minutes, so that's good. Well, like everybody around here, yes, Gordon and I love to talk, and we can talk forever. And whenever Gordon talks, I'd like to listen because he shares a lot of wisdom, so I'm thankful for that. When Pastor Bob asked me to share about how I came to the day school, I thought to myself, well, what would my life be like without the day school and without the church? My family and I, David, he's in the back, he was one of the rock and rollers up here. And my husband David, my son Joseph, and my daughter Hannah, we moved up here in Coral Springs in April of 2002. I had 2 little babies, and I wanted them to go to a Christian-loving school. So I visited many schools in the area. Now, at the time, we were living in Miami Lakes, so I could only drive up here, certain days because I was working. And so I would come here, visit a few schools first, and I did. I visited about, 10, 12 schools. Would go back home, look for more schools on the internet and Yellow Pages, and found this school. This was the last school that I found on the Yellow Pages. So I came in. Hannah was sleeping. My mom had Joseph. Hannah was sleeping in the van, and Miss Cheryl came out. She says, "Oh, here, put a mat on the floor, and then she can sleep there." And that was it. I was home. We came, and this was the school. Okay, so then it was time to find a church. So we visited some other churches, some big, some very big, some small. And after visiting another 10 churches every Sunday, I was home. And the rest is history. This is my home. This is my family. These are my brothers and sisters. And if I would have gone somewhere else, it would have been me going somewhere else. God brought us here. God put me here. God put us here. When my husband got sick, my brothers and sisters here from the day school and church, they would prepare meals for us and deliver them to our home. I don't know of a big church that still does that. And as far as the music, oh my goodness gracious, I am so blessed that the Cooties decided to take that. So Reverend Gerald, whoever was responsible for starting Jonathan, asking him to the assistant treasurer or whoever it was, thank you, because God has put him here and he blesses me with music, and I love it. I'm so thankful. And they invited David to be on when Michael decided to leave, not to the state that's south of Virginia, but he went upstate. Yeah, we can't say that. Pastor Bob doesn't like the NC word. So the day school has just been a blessing to me and my family, and has brought all you family members, brothers and sisters. And that's one thing. But I also want to say two things. Maybe some of you do not know about Pastor Appreciation Month. And I just want to, October is designated as Pastor Appreciation Month. And I just want to remind you all to, just bless your pastor, bless their family, their wives, how important they are. And it's not only in our church, Pastor Bob and Cheryl, but also, is Jordan here?
No.
Okay. Well, our youth pastor, but also the photographer today. You can have a seat, Gordon, just right now, because I'm going to have pastors stand up. So if all the pastors could stand up, because Pastor Gordon, he's also a pastor, and Pastor Oscar is he's a Spanglish, and he's also a blessing to me. And also special ministries like Jonathan and Brenda, you pastor to us as well. So I just want encourage everyone to remember them, keep them in your prayers, not only in October, you can pray for them the rest of the year too, but thank you.
I want to make some recognitions real quickly about some people that have had an impact and have been very involved in the ministry here and have had an impact. And I wanted to just make a quick recognition of those, some that are with us and some that are not. First, I wanted to acknowledge Pastor Henry Dotson. Henry was a wonderful part of this congregation. He was involved with the music ministry of this church. He was the interim pastor when Pastor Scott left and before I came. And I knew Pastor Dotson from elsewhere. And so it was a blessing for me to know that Pastor Dotson was going to be here when I came as a pastor. I knew that he would be a mentor that I could go to and ask questions of at any time, and he would be there to give me his time and share with me great wisdom. And so that was a blessing. Whenever I look at these altars, I think of Pastor Henry. Pastor Henry made these altars for this church, and so it's a lasting legacy that he has left. And we're going to have a 25-year video in just a moment, and there's going to be a little recognition of him at the end of that video. And so we want to recognize Pastor Henry and his great contribution to this congregation. And it's been mentioned, Gordon. He's our oldest member now. Not necessarily in age, but in how long he's been here, He's our oldest member that's been here in this church, and he and Meg, and we are so grateful for him. And he's been involved with teaching and preaching and filling in the pulpit when I'm away. And Gordon, you're appreciated. You're loved, and we thank you for all that you do. We thought Steve Nelson was going to be here. He was our only full-time pastor that we've had, youth pastor, and he's not able to be with us. But we wanted to at least acknowledge Steve Nelson and his years here with us in youth ministry. Mike was one of our youth pastors here for a while. Mike actually has the distinction of having been here twice. He was actually doing some youth work over the summertime, sort of as an intern, even though youth ministry was not what he was going to be going into. But he did spend a couple of summers here before Steve came, and then when Steve resigned, he took it over and did it for a year before Jordan Caldwell came on as our youth pastor, part-time youth pastor. And last week was Jordan's last week with us. And so we're sad to see him go, but we have had some wonderful youth pastors that have ministered to our youth, and we're excited. Now, we have 4 ladies that have taken it on as a youth council, and they're going to be dealing with our youth ministry, and we're excited about what's going to be happening there in our youth ministry from this point forward. Mike's claim to fame is Fear Factor, and especially the one with the casket. How many of you youth remember the casket? Fear Factor. A couple of them over here. We had a casket here for a while. You may wonder why in the world we had a casket. Well, it was used as a prop, as an illustration for a sermon, and then it just hung around for a while. Well, when Mike took over the youth ministry, he decided to use that as a fear factor. And what did you have them do? And sat on it so that they couldn't push the lid up. Yeah. Fear factor. That would get me. But we thank those that have been contributing members of this congregation and to its ministries. And now we're going to watch that 25-year video. Steve put it together so you know that it has a humorous, basis to it. Why don't you stand for just a moment? You've been sitting for a while. I'll just take just a moment to just stand and kind of loosen up and take a load off of the side you've been sitting on and give it a rest. As we take a look at a humorous look at the past 25 years of this congregation. Be seated. Hit it, Fern Doc.
In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? And ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Karen, she's a silver sun. You best walk her away and watch it shining. Watch her watch the morning come. A silver tear appearing now. I'm crying, ain't I? Gone to Carolina in my mind. There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind. And hey babe, the sky's on fire. I'm dying, ain't I? I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Well, dark and silent late last night, I think I might have heard the highway calling. Geese in flight and dogs that bite. The signs that might be omens say I'm going, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. With a holy host of others standing around me, still I'm on the dark side of the moon. And it seems like it goes on like this forever. must forgive me if I'm up and gone to Carolina in my mind. In my mind, I'm gone to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Yes, I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Gone to Carolina in my mind. And I'm gone to Carolina in my mind. Gone to Carolina in my mind.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. In the jungle, the quiet jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. Near the village, the peaceful village, the lion sleeps tonight. Near the village, the quiet village, the lion sleeps Hush, my darling, don't fear, my darling, the lion sleeps tonight. Hush, my darling, don't fear, my darling, the lion sleeps tonight.
I am a fine musician, I practice every day, and people come from miles around just to hear me play. My trumpet, they love to hear my trumpet.
I am a fine musician and I get lots of praise. When I play my tuba, people throw money my way. My tuba, they love to hear my tuba.
I am a fine musician, my music is so gay. Everybody dances when they hear me play. My trombone, we love to hear my trombone. Da, 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 da,
I am a fine musician, that's what the people say. And all the children follow me when they hear me play. My piccolo, they love to hear my piccolo.
join us, come join us, just take a part of
Let's our going join us.
He was a famous trumpet man from out Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was a top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft. He's in the army now, a blowing reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. They made him blow a bugle for his Uncle Sam. It really brought him down because he couldn't jam. The captain seemed to understand. Because the next day the cap went out and drafted a band. And now the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. A toot, a toot, a toot-a-toot, a toot, he blows it into the bar. In boogie rhythm, he can't blow a note unless the bass and guitar is playing with him. He makes the company jump when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. He was a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. And when he plays boogie woogie bugle, he was busy as a blues bee. And when he plays, he makes the company jump into the bar. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Do-do-do-do-da-da, do-da-da, toot-toot, he blows it into the bar. And he can blow a note in the bass and guitar with a good and the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's a boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. Puts the boys to sleep with boogie every night and wakes them up the same way in the early fright. They clap their hands and stamp their feet because they know how he plays. When someone gives him a beat, he really breaks it up. When he plays reveille, he's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B. And the company jumps when he plays reveille. He's the boogie woogie bugle boy of Company B.
Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase.
Hakuna Matata. Ain't no passing craze.
It means no worries for the rest of your days. It's our problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata. Why, when he was a young warthog.
When I was a young warthog.
Very nice.
Thanks.
He found his aroma like a certain appeal. He could clear the savannah after every meal.
I'm a sensitive soul, though I seem thick-skinned. And it hurt that my friends never stood downwind. And oh, the shame!
What a shame!
What a change in my name!
Oh, what's in a name?
And I got downhearted.
How did you feel?
Every time that
Hey, Pumper, not in front of the kids.
Oh, sorry.
Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase. Hakuna Matata. Ain't no passing craze.
It means no worries for the rest of your days.
Yeah, sing it, kid. It's our problem-free philosophy. Hakuna Matata.
There's something strange in your neighborhood. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! If there's something weird and it don't look good, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! I ain't afraid of no ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. If you're seeing things running through your head, who can you call? Ghostbusters! An invisible man sleeping in your bed. Oh, who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! I ain't afraid of no ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! If you're all alone, pick up the phone and call. Ghostbusters! I ain't afraid of no ghosts. I hear it likes the girls. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Yeah, 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 yeah. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! If you have a dose of a freaky ghost, baby, you better call. Ghostbusters! Let me tell you something. Bustin' makes me feel good. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Don't get caught alone, no, no. Ghostbusters! When it comes through your door, unless you just want some more, I think you better call. Ghostbusters! Ow! Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Think you better call. Ghostbusters! Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! I can't hear you. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Louder! Ghostbusters! Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Who can you call?
The right choice. Woody and I have that same problem.
Oh, yeah.
Well, a preacher went out hunting, 'twas on one Sunday morn. Although 'twas against his religion, he took his gun along. He shot himself some very fine quail and one big measly hare. And on his way returning home, he met a great big grizzly bear. Well, the bear marched out in the middle of the road, and he walked to the guy, you see. The guy got so excited, he climbed a persimmon tree. Well, the bear sat down upon the ground, and the guy climbed out on a limb. And he cast his eyes to the Lord of the skies, and these words said to him, "Oh, Lord, didn't you deliver Daniel from the lion's den? Also deliver Jonah from the belly of the whale den. 3 Hebrew children from the fiery furnace, or the good book do you can't help me. For goodness sake, don't you help that bear. Now, Mr. Bear, let's you and I reason this thing out together, eh? Nice bear. Good old bear. Will you please go away, Mr. Bear? Say, Mr. Bear, if I just give you one nice, big, good, juicy bite, would you go away then? Well, you would, eh? Well, I'll stay right here. Well, that guy stayed in that tree, I think it was all night. He said, oh, Lord, if you don't help that bear, you're going to see an awful fight. And just about then the limb let go and he came tumbling down. Should have seen him get his razor out before he hit the ground. Well, he hit the ground, he was a-cutting right and left, and he put up a very game fight. About then the bear hugged this guy and squeezed him a little too tight. Oh, he soon lost his razor, but the bear held on with a vim, and he cast his eyes to the Lord in the sky, and these words said, and once more said to him, now listen, oh Lord, did you deliver Daniel from the lion's den? Also deliver Jonah from the belly of the whale and in 3 Hebrew children from the fiery furnace, called a good book to declare. Now Lord, if you can't help me, don't you help that